guess what? The new PC is set up. Yay! Well, it's sort of set up. There's a lot of fine-tuning and stuff to do, especially with the recording settings and things like that. But today, we are going to be taking a little bit of a break from the rocket thing that we've been doing, getting to space and stuff like that. And we're going to be setting up the, trying to test the new PC things, because this graphics card is very nice compared to the old one. The old one right now would be running about 80% usage. This one's running at 35 or 40% usage on the graphics card, and yet it's still hitting only 30 frames per second, which is really weird. So we're going to look at a whole bunch of situations, and if you guys have any suggestions for why it is still getting such a low frame rate and yet using less of the GPU, then let me know. But we'll look at that today. So first, let's do some basic tests. And if you guys know anything, you guys probably know a lot more about Windows computers and graphics cards and things than I do, because I've been on Macs my entire life until recently, also a Linux computer, and now Windows. So let's see. So it's currently running about 30 or 40 frames per second while in this room right here. Now, if I go into the video settings, and also it's running about 40%, 45, 35% GPU usage. So if we go here and change VSync, so for those of you guys who don't know what that means, VSync is basically, it syncs the Minecraft frame rate to the monitor. So it should be syncing it at 60, although if it can't run fast enough, it'll do 30, so it was doing 30 for some reason. Except we turn off VSync, and as you can see, by the way, it's in the top left of the screen. It says Minecraft 1.7.10, and then it says 78 FPS, 90 FPS, 81 FPS, like that. That's the frames per second. So it was doing about 30, 40, and now that we turned VSync off, now it's doing 80 to even over 100, if it'll hit that again. It hit that a moment ago, but in any case, so yeah, so it's above 60. It's definitely above 60. Now, here's another thing that might help for those of you guys who know what it means. Which is it? Shift. There we go. Debug pi. I think that has to do with the memory, though, maybe, or is that how long it takes to render each frame? I think that might be how long it takes to render each frame. So that is what's going on with that. We'll keep that on. There's also in the newer versions of Minecraft, there's a FPS thing that goes in the bottom left corner, but it doesn't appear to be in this version because it doesn't want to open. So let's go ahead and head upstairs and see what happens. So as you can see, it keeps jumping down below 60. The GPU is still being used around 45%, which is very odd. Whoops, wrong button. Let's try... What else can we change? We can change smooth lighting down to off. What does that do? By the way, here's another thing about the new computer, is that it only has one stick of memory, just because I couldn't afford to buy two of them. So it has single channel, and it is an integrated graphics card. For those of you guys who are wondering, it is the Vega 11 graphics, RX Vega 11. And it's integrated into the 2400G CPU. But in any case, that's not besides the point. That is part of the point. But in any case, the point is, let's just go ahead and go walking around and see what happens to the frame rate. So, but yeah, so there's single channel memory because only one memory stick. So, and that single channel is handling the graphics card and the CPU in one. So, for some reason, graphics card is being used only at 50% right now, and yet having trouble keeping up with the Minecraft. So there's got to be a bottleneck in the system somewhere. I don't know if it's perhaps with Java or something. Not sure what it is. Just before doing this, I installed Java 8 in order to run Minecraft Forge to get all the mods installed and stuff. And so maybe a different version of Java, although I don't know if a different version of Java would actually be able to run this Minecraft thing at all. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think if you know anything about it. But in any case, we are going to be exploring that today. So let's see. Video settings. What else can we change? Actually, here's a question. What difference does it make if we bring everything up a lot? Let's try as an experiment. Let's try bringing everything up. Because this graphics card has certain strengths, and it's quite possible that some of them, let's do all particles, it's quite possible that it's stronger at certain things, like maybe it can do fancy graphics really well, but it can't do something else really well, or something like that. Let's go all the way up to 16 chunks and see what happens, although it may be that the game has not been allowed enough memory to do 16. It's on the top right of the screen, by the way, the memory, and it appears that it may be okay. It may be okay, but here's something very interesting, is that's basically everything on max, right? So let's see, graphics fancy, smooth lighting maximum, 3D anaglyph, we'll leave that off, clouds on, anisotropic filtering is off, but we don't really need that anyway. VSync is off just so that we can see the actual performance of the computer. And it's on 16 chunks, everything appears to be on, and as you can see, it is running at 30 frames per second, roughly speaking. 30 frames per second, and it hit 40 sometimes, it's going down to 25, which means that it's running roughly the same, slightly worse, but roughly the same on max settings as it was on lower settings, which is really weird. Really weird. Oh, actually, no, it's not. Wait, what happens if we turn VSync on? What happens if we turn VSync on? Because with VSync off, it was hitting close to 100 frames per second. So it is running a lot worse right now with everything on max. With VSync on, it's hitting about 20 FPS, which is lower than the 30 or 40 that it was doing. So it did slow it down somewhat, but not nearly as much as you'd expect it to, especially with bringing the render distance all the way up and turning the graphics on fancy, which is very weird indeed. Okay. Let's see, what else can we do? Let's go into a forest. Oh, that's the other thing. Let's go away from the forest, because when it was hitting close to 100, we were nowhere near a forest, and the forest, with the fancy graphics thing, it has to render through all of the leaf blocks, as you can see there. So it renders the leaf block and through it to render whatever's on the other side, and that means that takes extra rendering to do. So that is an interesting situation. So it's still going about 20, even while having settings all on maximum, which is weird. Let's see. And oh wow, the GPU, that's odd. The GPU is running about 35% right now. Let's actually, oh, that's probably because of the VSync. Let's go ahead and turn VSync off. GPU jumped up immediately up to 42, 43, and I saw it hit 50 last time VSync was off, but it's not doing that right now. It's stuck at 30 frames per second, 30 frames per second, and let's see. Okay, so what else can we do? Let's go ahead and fancy graphics doesn't appear to be making much difference. You know what? Here's what we'll do. We need to get the frames per second. It is currently between 20 and 30. We need to get it up to 60. So let's do the settings one at a time. There we go. The graphics card just hit 50, which is interesting. Okay. We need to do the settings one at a time, turn one setting completely off, and see if it makes any difference to the frame rate, and see what happens. Okay, graphics, fast. Now, of course, the frame rate will go up a lot because when it changes to fast graphics, it has to reload all of the chunks, but once the chunks reload, it should start working properly. Well, it is working properly, but it should start showing us what it is that it will actually handle. So it's currently loading chunks, loading up to the 16 chunk limit that we currently told it to go to. And that is a thing, is that as the chunks keep going, it slows down a little bit, but it doesn't appear to be slowing down much. It doesn't appear to be slowing down much. Memory is using a lot. Memory is using 4.8 gigabytes out of the available 6, and the reason it's 6 instead of 8 is because 2 are blocked off for the GPU. Is that the phrase, blocked off? Anyways, so they're set aside for the graphics. So in any case, this appears to be slowly loading in, but it appears that the fancy graphics actually did seem to improve things a bit, unless it's just that the chunks are still loading. Actually, that's a good question, is let's go ahead and set the chunks so that it doesn't take quite as long. Let's set the chunks on 8 because that is half of 16. It's actually a lot fewer chunks than half, but that is besides the point. In one direction, it is 8 chunks. So that is that. So let's see. So it's currently running about 60, actually. Running about 60 frames per second. Let's go closer to a forest. So that we can see the effect of the fancy graphics more clearly. So it appears to have loaded in the whole area, and it appears that it is running about 70 frames per second, 80, 70, 80, wow, that's really good. Let's go ahead and jump around a little bit so that we get some extra movement. It goes down into the 60s, down to 50, up to 60, okay. Let's go ahead and turn on fancy graphics and see if that makes much of a difference. Once it loads in the chunks once again, then we shall be able to tell properly. So let's see. It appears to have loaded... oh, nope. 87 chunk updates. You can see that number next to the frames per second number. You can see how many chunks it's currently loading in. It's doing like 78. It also measures chunk updates. It is why it's called chunk updates, is because if a block changes or if a cow moves or something like that, I'm guessing that it would moves as opposed to moo, but I'm guessing it would update the chunk as well for that. So this appears to be, yeah, we're still running about 70, about 80, going down to 60 a little bit. Let's go ahead and jump around a little bit, and it goes down into the 50s, down into the 40s. Okay, so fancy graphics made a little bit of a difference in terms of lag. Frame rate lags, so that's okay. But what is the GPU doing? The GPU is running currently at 50%, so that is okay. So that means we do have extra GPU power to play around with, which is weird. So why is it struggling so much? Anyways, let's get into the next setting. Let's try to prioritize these because we probably won't be able to get through them all. Maybe we will. I don't know. Let's turn off smooth lighting and see what happens. Turn off smooth lighting, and did it have to reload all the chunks for that? It apparently is reloading all of the chunks. And you know what? Where are we right here? Is that the house over there? I don't know where the house is, but we need to sleep through the night to get... Actually, you know what? Just for the sake of testing, normally I don't do this, but just for the sake of testing, rather than having to find the house and then get back here, let's go ahead and do a time set. Time set 0. There we go. Now we can test it better. Okay, so we are getting about 80, about 70. What was it we just changed? Oh, yeah, smooth lighting. Okay, so turning smooth lighting off with fancy graphics still on because we're testing them one at a time. Everything else on maximum. And except for the render distance because it takes a long time to load in 16 chunks. Okay. So it's currently with smooth lighting off, currently getting around 70 frames per second, 60s, oh, jumped down to 40, jumped to 50, and still at 50, oh, jumped into the 30s, and that's weird. It seems to actually go lower frame rate with the smooth lighting off. So let's go ahead and turn smooth lighting back on maximum, and let's see now. Okay, so 62, 50s, and let's load in the rest of the chunks around here. You can see them over at the end of the field of vision. They are sort of loading in at the end of our visual distance. That's the word, visual distance. And okay, so now with smooth lighting on, which makes it look a lot better, a lot less less whatever the word is for not smooth lighting. But in any case, we're in the 50s of frame rate. We are in the 50s. Which is about the same as without smooth lighting. And let's try, okay, down into the 40s. It doesn't appear to be hitting the 30s. It doesn't appear to be going down into the 30s unless there's another factor that messed with it as well. But it appears to go faster with smooth lighting on, which is very weird, but seems to be the case. By the way, for those of you guys who are wondering, does it say over here somewhere? No. This is running at 720 resolution. The game, it's set in a window on the screen at 1280 by 720. Anyways, back to the point. So, let's go ahead and try the next thing. Try turning clouds off. Clouds off. And now okay, so it's running about the same, running about 70, running in the 70s. Jump down into the 50s, okay, jump down into the 50s, and jump down into the 40s, okay, but hasn't hit the 30s yet, which is good. But it appears to be not making much of a difference. Okay, it went down into the 40s there, and it doesn't appear to be making much of a difference. Oh, something... I just looked back on the GPU meter. Right now it's running about 55%, 65, but it had jumped up to, looks like about 70 for a little bit of time. Not sure why. Let's go into the video settings menu and try turning clouds back on and see... Wait, is it... While it was in the video settings menu, it appears to be climbing in GPU usage. Nope, not really. It's going back down to 65. Okay, it looked like it was climbing. Okay, so anyways, clouds back on. And we now have in the 70s once again. Excuse me. We have in the 70s, and we have in the 50s, and in the 40s a little bit. And okay, so clouds don't appear to make much difference. Clouds do not appear to make much difference. So, fancy graphics make a little bit of difference, about 10 frames per second. Smooth lighting appears to make no difference, except turning it off seems to make it run slower for some reason. Clouds don't appear to make much difference. And MIP map levels, might as well turn that off. What that does is turning that off makes it look... Oh, lag while it's doing its thing, reloading. Okay. I think MIP map makes it look more fuzzy in the distance. Yeah, you can sort of see maybe that the trees look all grainy over there. They don't look smooth. But with MIP map off, once the chunks have loaded in once again, we should be seeing that. We should be seeing something. Chunks are still loading. 55 chunk updates, 60 chunk updates, 58 chunk updates, 72, 76, 70, 86, 99 chunk updates, 83. How long is it going to take to load these guys in? How long is it going to take? How long is it going to take? 113 chunk updates, okay, and I think they're done. I think they're done. Okay, so we are with the, what was it? MIP map, I think. Yes, MIP map is off. And MIP map is, without that, it is running about 60 frames per second, about 50 frames per second, and if it hit the 40s, and if we stand still, it should hit the 70s fairly soon. No, maybe not. Yes, it hit the 70s. Okay. So that is that. So what is going on with this? And GPU usage is about 50%, about 55. It spiked up to what looks like 70 for a couple seconds, but it went back down. So the MIP map does not appear to make any difference whatsoever. Okay, render distance is on 8 chunks, and that appears to make somewhat of a difference. But let's move on. Let's try unlimiting the frame rate rather than keeping it at 120. Okay, is this going to do anything? And the game is frozen. Why is it? Oh, there we go. There we go. Okay, that was from turning the MIP map back on is why it is reloading everything. Okay, now it is reloading everything. Now, when it is done, you can see the chunks loading in the distance as well, which is really nice. Okay. Once it is done, we should see, we still do have the VSync off. Okay, so what we just changed is unlimiting the frame rate, just in case it's doing some weird thing to the situation. And it appears, okay, so it is still, the chunks are not all loaded in yet, but it is still running about 40-ish frames per second, which is weird, because it appears, unless it's just because the chunks are still loading and that lowers the frame rate while they're loading, but it appears that the frame rate is slower like this. It's probably just because the chunks are still loading in. Anyways, let's go ahead and move on. Let's go ahead and set this back down to 120. And actually, no, let's bring it up. Let's bring it all the way down. No, Okay, so the monitor is at 60. That's what the monitor shows. 120, the reason I had it there was just because I didn't want limiting to 60. I didn't want it to go down to 55 for some reason. So limit it at twice 60, which is 120. But instead, rather than going unlimited, let's go to 240, which is the double of 60. Okay, so now let's go ahead and check on brightness. Might as well check that. Bring the brightness down to moody. Oh, and you know what that means is that afterwards I have to go in the game files to set the brightness back to above maximum again. Okay, well, in any case, that is besides the point. So let's go ahead and try to test this. We've still got some chunk updates happening, but it should be able to run 60 while the chunks are updating is what it should be able to do. And that is actually what it's doing right now. It's close to it. It's running about 50, and it's running about... Yeah, it's running in the 50s. Running in the 50s, okay? So it appears to be a little bit slower, if anything. And so let's bring that up, and particles. Let's turn particles to minimal. And we now have... See, the weird thing about this is... So the CPU is a lot more powerful, it seems like. The screen recorder is... OBS is working a lot better, it seems. Especially being able to prioritize processes is helping a lot. So OBS is a higher priority than other things, is the way I've set it to be, for those of you guys who are wondering. But basically, it's really weird why the GPU is only... Like, the GPU on the Mac was running around 80% usage and hitting about these frame rates. And this thing, it's obvious the GPU is more powerful, because instead of running at 80% usage, it's running around 50 right now for quite a while. The whole time we've been running around in circles right now. But even though it's running only about 50% usage, so it still has 50% extra capacity, it is still only hitting these frame rates, which is really weird. But again, it could be the single channel memory for the CPU and GPU. That could be what the problem is, but I don't know. Anyways, we only have a couple of more things to test. So let's bring the particles back on. Anisotropic filtering. That, in theory, would make it run a lot slower because it's giving it more to do. It wasn't doing that before, and now it is doing it. So it should, in theory, make it a lot slower. But the other things that should make it slower appear to have, if anything, made it faster, most of them. So this thing that should make it slower, or no, the other way around. The other things that we were trying that should have made it faster appear to have made it slower. So this thing that is supposed to make it slower should make it faster, perhaps, if that logic holds true. And so far, it appears to be not making any difference whatsoever. It's still running about 70, still running about 60, 55. That is weird. Okay. Let's go ahead in that case, and let's go ahead and turn anisotropic filtering off, because don't even know what that does. If you guys know what that does, let me know, because I don't really know. But in any case, the last thing that we have to check is the render distance. So, this thing will obviously make a difference. If we turn it down to 2 chunks, we should see that, once it reloads, we should see, okay, now that we are on 2 chunks, it is hitting 100, 120, 130. Okay, so it is going really well, and every other graphics setting is on, right? Except for anisotropic filtering. Every other setting, and 3D anaglyph, we don't want that right now. And VSync is off, just so that we can test the maximum frame rate. So, it is running well above 60 right now, so render distance is making a big difference. And why is it so dark? Why is it so dark? Set time to 0. Aha, there we go. Okay, yes, so render distance is making a huge difference. But why? Also, if we put trees on the scene, let's go ahead and go to somewhere where there are trees on the scene. And what happens, because it renders through the leaves, right? So it might have gone down a little bit, hitting the 80s more commonly, but it appears more or less... Oh, it hit the 60s. Yeah, so it does slow down a bit with trees in the area. But if we turn off fancy graphics, then it should run much faster and not really care about the trees being there. Okay, so fancy graphics does seem to make some difference, and let's go ahead and try a couple more things, such as, first of all, bringing this up to 16 chunks, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to be right back once this thing has loaded in all the chunks. I'm going to stand on top of that hill there where we were and wait for it. The final verdict on the 16 chunk render distance? Well, it is going about 30 in the 20s and the 30s, so it's not too big of a drop down in frame rate. However, the weird thing is the GPU right now is still running about 50%, about 60. It just hit 70 just a moment ago. Yeah, just hit 70 again. So around there, so it is running closer to its limit, but it still has a lot more capacity. So why is it only getting that far? Okay, so let's get down from here. Let's use the poly tool because it's faster. That would be smart. Let's go ahead and see from down here. It's about the same. All the chunks have loaded in, all 16 chunks, and let's set this back up to 0. There we go. And so that is that. So I don't know why is it still running at 40 frames per second? Because it should be able to run closer to 16, or definitely at 8, but 8 seems to be slow as well. So that is weird. So let me know what you guys think about the matter. If you guys have any thoughts on anything like that. Hopefully, either way, hopefully this video was helpful to some of you guys. If you're interested in trying to see what Minecraft does with its frame rates and stuff like that. Unfortunately, I can't really explain what's going on here, but it gives you loads of examples of what is going on. So that is that. And I think we just picked up an egg. Yay! And no chicken. Oh, there's another egg. Yay! And no chicken. Okay. So that is that. So let's go ahead and head back home. I think home is this way. Yes, it is. That is excellent. Okay. And that is that. So this new computer, for those of you guys who are wondering, is working out really nicely, aside from not sure why the graphics... Right now it's running at 45% GPU usage and running very slow. It's possible because isn't there a thing about the CPU has to call for the frame to be drawn, and then the graphics card draws it? So maybe it's somewhere in between there that I'm just looking through the menus in case you're wondering why the guy's just standing there. But the CPU is only running about 30%, so it shouldn't be an issue, unless maybe I need to prioritize Minecraft as well as OBS, although, I don't know. The CPU is running at 3.2 gigahertz currently. It is capable of 3.6 up to 3.9, so it should be perfectly fine. So not sure what is going on. But in any case, the new computer is going very nicely. Aside from this, OBS seems to run a lot better, especially with the advantage of... so by the way, what we have right now, in case any of you lost track, we have everything on maximum except for anisotropic filtering is off, and VSync is off, and frame rate is slightly limited, but not much. So anyways, yeah, so being a desktop, it's very helpful because the plugs can stay plugged in and not have to get unplugged all the time, and so it means a lot less time to set up all the time. Also, the CPU is a lot more powerful, so OBS seems to be running a lot better, so that is excellent indeed. And different things like that. There's a lot of good points about this computer that is working really nicely. Oh, not to mention the fact that if you guys may have noticed, first of all, the mic sounds different, but also okay, that looks dark. I think it's time to sleep through the night, maybe, or something. Oh, you know why it looks dark is because we turned down the brightness thing, so I'll need to change that in the settings file afterwards. But in any case, yeah. Oh, and if you guys want to know how to do that, basically just go in your settings file, your options file for Minecraft, and change was it the gamma? I think it was the gamma. If it's on bright here in video settings, then gamma would be 1, and so change it up to 2 or 3, or as high as you want, even, and you should get some nice looking results out of that. But in any case, Oh yes, I was gonna say, you may have noticed the mic sounds different. I added a bunch more filters due to the extra CPU power that is available, and also the computer is capable of cooling things that are a lot more powerful than what it currently has in it. So the fans are running very slow, only about roughly 25% speed is what the fans are currently doing. So the computer is very quiet compared to the old one, which had a big desk fan, not to mention the internal fans that ran really fast and loud and stuff like that. So it's really, really nice. Really nice. And there's a DVD drive in it, which is the most important part of any computer, maybe not. Something like that. Anyways, here's our little mountain thing that we like to climb on sometimes, but that is that. So, hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Hopefully this was helpful to some of you guys if you're looking to see what Minecraft does with different frame rates and things. And if any of you guys have ideas how to speed this up, it could again be the single channel memory. That could be what's going on. But in any case, see you guys later. Hopefully stop getting tongue-tied. Hopefully you enjoyed the video, and see you guys later. Bye-bye!